Hi, this lesson is on section 1.5, which is using a plan to solve a problem. There's 4 steps that you should follow when you're reading a word problem and you're attempting to solve it. And I'm going to read them off real quick, and I would definitely write these in your notes. I don't know if you have to write every single word here, but the first step, read and understand the problem. You got to read the problem carefully. You got to identify what do you know and what are you trying to find out. I've had so many times in my career teaching where someone comes back to my desk, they have a word problem they're trying to solve, and they throw their book on my desk and they're like, I don't get this. And I'll ask the person, well, what are you trying to find? What does the question ask you to figure out? And the person's response is, well, I don't know. It's almost like they haven't read the problem carefully. You got to take the time to carefully read the problem, figure out what do I want to find out, and what information do I know, okay? Second, after those things are done, make a plan. What do I have to do to try to answer this is when you make a plan. That's what you're actually doing. And then once you have your plan, execute your plan. Carry it out. Try solving the problem. And then once you solve it, you got to ask yourself, look back, ask yourself, is the answer a reasonable answer? I mean, how many times in my teaching career can I think of where I ask a question such as, what is your hourly salary, let's say at 7-Eleven, and people on a quiz will have answers of $500 an hour, and I'm sitting there like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You're not going to make $500 an hour working at 7-Eleven, and yet the person that wrote this on paper just left it and didn't even think about it. Ask yourself when you're done, is this reasonable? You might want to pause the video right here and then jot this down, okay? Here would be a sample problem that we would need to use maybe that 5-point plan. So let's read the problem carefully. You run in a city where the short blocks on the north-south streets are 1/10 of a mile long. The long blocks on the east-west streets are 1/1500ths of a mile long. You're going to run 2 long blocks east, a number of short blocks south, 2 long blocks west, and then back to your starting point. You want to run 2 miles. How many short blocks would you run? Maybe I should draw a little picture of this. Let's do our picture here. You're going to run 2 long blocks east, so we have 2 of these long blocks, and they said the long blocks are 1/1500ths of a mile each. We're going to run a number of short blocks south. So after we run to the east, which would be in this direction, we're going to run an unknown number of short blocks south. We don't know how many. Each short block is 1/10 of a mile. Then we're going to go back west, 2 more of these long blocks, and then we're going to go back north. Now we don't know how many blocks we ran. We know each one's 1/10 of a mile, but we don't know how many. I'll put a little variable there. Okay? And when the whole thing's done, we want to run 2 miles. Okay? So here's what I know. The question is, how many short blocks should I run? You know, what would be the answer to that? Okay, so I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to write, I think, a little open sentence to solve this. Okay, can you see how I have 4 long blocks? I have 4 long blocks I'm running, and each one, I'll multiply, each one is 1/1500ths of a mile, plus I have an unknown number. I don't know how many short blocks I did here or here. I have an unknown number of them I'm going to run. So let's say I have each short block is 1/10 of a mile, and I'll put N for I don't know how many short blocks I'm going to run. And I want this to equal 2 miles, okay? All I need to do, I want to run a 2-mile run. All I need to do to answer this open sentence is figure out what number can I plug in here that will make this thing add up to 2. Once I figure that out, I'd have the answer to the problem. Okay? And if you go to the next page, you'll notice they work out something similar to what I just did there. Okay? So I can let you finish that up, but that's the way we could solve that. One last thing that we have to do in this video, this will be a short video, is formulas. Sometimes we use a formula to solve a problem. A formula is an equation that relates 2 or more quantities. So in other words, quantities here we would have 2 or more unknowns. Okay? If we have 2 or more unknowns in a problem, we can use a formula to solve it. Now, you might want to pause the video in just a second and write these formulas down. I'm not going to necessarily make you memorize every one of them, but you should definitely be familiar with these. There's a temperature formula here for converting Fahrenheit to Celsius. There's a simple interest formula. Again, you should write these down in a second when we pause the video. A distance traveled. Now, this one we should know by heart. Distance equals rate times time. That's one we ought to know. And then we've used this one, or I'm sure you've used, I know we used this one the other day in class, profit equals income minus expense. That was one of the word problems that we did. So why don't you pause the video here, write those down. All right, now that you paused the video and wrote those down, the homework today is going to apply reading word problems and solving, and it's also going to be you using formulas. Be careful when you look at these today and you notice in the directions, some of these problems don't even ask you to solve. It's so important to read carefully. Look at these. In exercises 3 to 5, identify what you know and identify what you need to find out. And then notice here, you don't need to even solve the problem. They're just asking you, what do you know? What do you need to find out? Or down here, they're asking you choose a formula. State the formula that is needed to solve the problem. You don't even have to solve it. They just want to know what formula would you use to solve it. Okay, so make sure you're reading carefully. Again, that's the first step of solving any kind of word problem. Read the problem carefully. I'm going to stop the video here. It wasn't that long. I will probably give you an audit tomorrow. And on my audit, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm probably going to ask you to write the 4 steps to solving a word problem, which you should have written down above. I'll just go back to that real quickly here. So if I can get this to move up. Come on now. Let's do it with my mouse. It's not helping. There we go. You know, this will probably be on my audit here, the problem-solving plan. You know, that's something we should know right here. And then the second thing that would be, I would definitely ask on the audit, is I would say, you know, what are the formulas I covered? You know, you should be able to quickly jot down these formulas on an audit. Okay? I'm going to pause the video there. If we have questions, bring those to class tomorrow.